Hello and welcome to Unscripted, where I'm Katy Davies and I'm with Sarah Atkins, and we're talking all things human design. But as the name suggests, we don't have a script for it. Today, we thought we would talk about um, how people use human design, the good and the bad. Because sometimes you do see some things where obviously human design is an understanding of people's patterns, behaviors, in alignment, out of alignment. And once you have that knowledge, like anything else in the world, you can either use that to help people or you can use that to influence people. So you're using the information to influence people, but it depends which way it goes. And um, I thought that'd be a little interesting chat just to talk about how we've seen human design used in different ways.
Yeah, especially over the last, what are we in 2026 now? Like both of us came to human design, what, 2020, wasn't it? Sort of back end of 2019, sort of 2020. I think it's changed. Like, so when I first came across it was relatively new. Like, it wasn't new because it's been around since the late 90s, but it wasn't very widely spoken about.
I mean, I'd
Um,
never heard of it,
no,
obviously. It wasn't like I'd heard of it and chosen not to look at it. When I
yeah,
discovered it, I'd literally never heard of it and then went straight in.
yeah.
Um,
And it's interesting now because obviously we're all living in echo chambers, aren't we? But it does feel like it's quite a buzzword at the moment. And I think what's fascinating is how people are using it and adapting it and changing it. And I don't disagree with that. I do think it was always meant to be, it was never meant to be prescriptive. It was always meant to be, like you say, around understanding, and we can adapt and we can interpret like anything, right? It's down to our own interpretations and our own understandings of various different things. But what I'm seeing, and I don't know if it's the same for you, I mean, we can literally look at human design through any lens,
mhm.
and it can be not adapted, but interpreted in different ways. Because, like anything, if we change the lens that we're looking through something at, then the meaning changes.
Yeah, I mean, I have done that over the years. I've done a talk with a relationship coach. So I've
Mm.
gone through the potentials, differences in the charts, where can it create clashes if there's not understanding.
Yeah.
I've done a talk with a lady who helped people who own their own hotels and B&Bs, and we were talking about marketing. And so we ended up looking a lot of the approaches from the lines and the profiles with how they might want to approach their kind of customer service within their bit, a line four versus a line two, all those things. You can, like you said, you're not spinning it necessarily, and the information is always the same, but you're kind of like you said, the lens that you're using it on gives a slightly different outlook, and it is a spin on it, isn't it? It is a spin on it.
Yeah. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that, by the way. But I do see there's like a darker side to it where people can use it for manipulation. And I think I think there's an interesting conversation around, like, there's a fine line between what's actually supportive and helpful versus what's actually manipulating and basically telling people everything that they're wrong, what that is wrong about them, and kind of suggesting that they need fixing or they need realigning. And um I don't know, I don't know how comfortable I feel with that, because I think knowledge is power. And I mean, the whole point and the reason I went down the human design route, if you've listened to things before, then it's because I was sort of tearing my hair out, feeling like I was completely failing at business, parenting, like everything. And I was really struggling with my boys. And I wasn't necessarily looking for answers. I was looking to understand them at a slightly different level, like where the clashes were, where the friction points were, like why certain things were more prevalent than others, and to try and improve our communication. That's the whole point and why I did it. I didn't do it to try and correct their behavior, if you know what I mean. I was trying to come with a view of more understanding and acceptance.
But then that is like anything, isn't it? Depending on the person who is
Mm,
using the information. So it's funny because I have seen a lot of people sort of criticize human design for putting people in a box, telling people kind of coming away. I mean, I've had people who've come to me for readings and they've come away from previous readings feeling awful because the person doing the reading told them something like they couldn't do something or that this was, but then that's not really human design's fault. That's the person, isn't it?
yeah.
That's the person who's done who's put across the information. And so I do try and be very intentional with the language that I use when I am talking about something, when I am sharing, because it is just information. And then that interpretation is whether it becomes helpful, unhelpful,
Mm.
um, and can really, create a environment that the person's going to thrive, or is it actually going to knock them back? That intentionality of the language that's used.
Yeah. And well, I mean, I remember one of the first things that I read was like an energetic blueprint, for just understanding all of the energy centers, the energy types, and things like that. And oh, maybe you had the same thing when you first went into business and you sort of do marketing courses and things like that. And everybody always talks about, not so much now necessarily, but there was a very big focusing on people's pain points, like everything that is kind of almost triggering. Effectively, you're kind of gaslighting people. And I think I have seen people or things online where you can see them using particular language, like you say, and they might be using human design language to kind of gaslight or target some of those friction points, some of those vulnerability points. And I just think that's really unethical. I think we have, when we let any kind of knowledge that we gain, we still have a responsibility with how we use it.
Mm, yeah, we do. I agree. And I think it's not restricted to human design, is it at all?
No.
It's that human design can get a bad rap for it and it it does give you so much insight and so much information
Yeah.
that it does need to be used responsibly. And I have bought things in the past that it didn't necessarily push my pain points, but the difference was it offered a solution. So it did list some things. It said, it was all about visibility. And at the time, it's 2020, we're all online, we're all opening our Facebook groups and doing our lives and doing all these things that is what happens in the online world at that time. And my I ran two businesses for a while, and so my previous business that I'd had for a long time was wedding cakes, and I'd never really had to be visible as me because I had pictures of wedding cakes.
Mm.
And so my Instagram looked fabulous and I had all these pictures over, but I didn't have to go, hi, I'm Katy. I did at wedding fairs or at certain times, and then when people met me individually, but like my face wasn't plastered and my voice, and I wasn't doing lives and I wasn't teaching and all this online stuff. And when it came to it, I was like, oh my gosh, like I couldn't do it. I just had this kind of, I can't do that. So I was looking for a solution to that problem. And I read this thing and it said, "Do you?" And it kind of listed, all the things that I did. Like I couldn't go live, I this, that, and the other. And it said, "Would you like to?" And then it had this other list, and I was like, "Yes, yes, I would." And so I bought the course, and then. Again, with the ethical marketing, someone could have said all that and then not delivered it. But in
Yeah.
this particular case, they did deliver it and it did work. And I opened my Facebook group and now you can't shut me up. And here I am, talking to you doing this. So I think, again, even with the pain points, there's a not an ethical way of doing it. It's like I think people have to recognize something. There has to be a reason. They're out there looking for a solution. If you think about tooth pain or, if you go into a
Yeah.
pharmacy and you've got toothache and there's this thing that says cures toothache, that's not necessarily pushing on a pain point, especially if it does cure the toothache. But it's like, what are people using this information for? Are we manipulating people? Because we've read the human design chart. We know that there's all these pain points. Let's just write them all down on a page so that people identify with them, because then we know we get a sale.
Yeah. It's interesting though as well, isn't it? Because human design isn't a fix. It it's all about, and I know we've talked about this and we've mentioned this so many times, it's about raising awareness. It's about shifting you from unconscious behaviors, patterns, loops. We get stuck in loops of repeated behavior, right? And nothing changes if nothing changes. But human design doesn't offer you that quick fix. It doesn't offer you a solution. What it does is it helps you to maybe reflect on or understand why you might be doing something, why something feels more comfortable to do than something else, why, if you're a line two, why sometimes you just want the world to piss off and leave you alone, right? um and why, as a line five, I get fed up with people coming to ask me because they assume that I have all the answers and they assume that I can fix their problems. I can't. um and I don't have a responsibility to do that. That's something that I now have to remind myself. I'm like, oh, right, they're calling you in to fix it. Just because you can doesn't mean you have to. I have to keep reminding myself of that sort of thing. So it didn't create a fix per se. What it did was raised my awareness. So I'm like, oh, I don't need to do that. So therefore, I don't need to burn myself out fixing everybody else's shit and not dealing with my own.
Mm.
So I think, I've said it already, knowledge is power, understanding is knowledge, shifting. And the whole purpose, I think, when you look back to the original purpose of human design, it was to shift us out of this unconscious, like, treadmill of autopilot that we were at a global scale, like 30 years ago. But we are becoming more conscious. And, maybe that is because more people are paying more attention. And because it's not just human design that's increased, is it? It's other modalities, like people you see. Astrology is like now in the mainstream, thanks to people like Yasmin Boland and what's her
Yeah,
name,
I
Kirsty Galligan.
my phone stream has somehow got, I don't watch it, but the morning TV show, what's it called, This Morning? I think it's Kat Deely and Ben Shepherd or something. And there was a woman on there explaining Mercury retrograde and what's happened. And I was like, really? That's like, she was like, yes. And Kat Deely's like asking her, saying, so how many, like, so what happens? And they're like, yeah, like there's the communication is more tricky at this point, and this is when the phones stop working. She's like, all right, and how long does that last? And I was like, wow, that has got mainstream.
I know, right? It's kind of, it's weird but cool. So are we just in, because I know we've talked about this between us, but we're heading towards 2027. which is the sort of big, well, they predicted originally it's like this big shift in consciousness is 2027, where we shift into the, is it the left angle? No, we're moving from the left angle cross of planning
I think it's the
into,
right angle cross of
is it
planning.
the right
It's the
angle?
same as my cross. So my cross is the cross we're shifting from.
Yeah, into the sleeping phoenix, is it?
Yeah.
Which is supposed to be like, this is at a planetary level, so this is not an individual level, this is like a planetary level, and there's like supposed to be a huge shift in human consciousness, a shift closer towards a balance of the feminine and the masculine energy. Like, if you know, there's loads of stuff on that, and I do wonder if these things becoming more mainstream is part of that general shift in consciousness and awareness.
It might be. I mean, like you said, we've started noticing human design everywhere in our world. Like
Yeah.
it's obviously a bit of a microcosm. But if that's happening there, if people are starting to become more self-aware and think about this, then we start to, when we've got our heads down and we're just getting on with whatever, then we're not really thinking about anything, are we?
No.
But as soon as you start to lift your head up and go, oh, hang on a minute, what's going on? What is this? What's over there? What's that person saying? Well, does this help me? Does this not help me? Do I resonate with this? Do I not? Um, I guess it's likely that then, yes, this stuff is going to become more prevalent, was it? Because people are just generally being more open, and information is now easier to get hold of
Mm.
than ever. I mean, we were over Christmas, we were all chatting away. My dad loves crosswords, and he used to do the Times crossword competition. And it was like this big thing every year for one weekend. In order to go into the competition, they would put this Times crossword in the newspaper, and he would have to fill it in and send it off to see if he qualified to go in for the competition.
Mm-hmm.
And so, as a family, we basically spent all weekend filling in this blooming crossword. And in order, so my dad would, it was like cryptic crossword, so he's figuring out the clues, but he wanted to back up and prove that he got it right. And there was no internet, there was no Google, so we had, our house was full of, I don't know if you guys had, like massive encyclopedias. And there were books everywhere, and we'd all be tasked with like flicking through this book to try and prove or find something which substantiated his hunch about this crossword answer. Like now, you just get your phone out
Yeah.
and Google it. So, human design, I don't know in that context, like, would human design have ever reached me at that? So, like you said, I know human design was probably around, but it couldn't reach me because there wasn't actually the pathways for the information to
Mm-hmm.
get to me.
Yeah.
Um, I remember my parents had a friend who did do astrology, and she did chart readings. And I now think, nobody ever mentioned, well, I think she did Reiki healing, and she taught me how to do the pendulum thing. And I was just like, all right. But I didn't, like, it never got discussed anywhere. I never
No.
saw anything anywhere else. Whereas now I think a part of it, again, why how Mercury retrograde has got on this morning is this just absolute dissemination of information.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I do think the digital age has made a massive difference in terms of, like you say, oh, I was doing something with, we were watching a TV show, or like with my 15-year-old, um, and you sort of sat there and you're going, oh, what have I seen them in before? And da, da, da. And you just literally get your phone out, Google it, and it's like, oh yeah, no, this is their kind of filmography, this sort of series. Oh, yeah, no, I know them from that one, or no, I haven't seen that. Oh, I didn't realize that. And you can go on so many different
I did that
tangents.
last night. I was watching a film. I was watching something on Netflix. I was like, I recognise him. Oh, I was watching the new Agatha Christie
Yeah.
three-part thing, Seven Dials, because I'd seen. So it's like I saw Martin Freeman on Graham Norton. So he was talking about it. So I went on Netflix, watched that, and then there was a character, and I was like, who's he? I said, looked up. He was the young King George in the Queen Charlotte
Oh, yeah.
Bridgerton thing. And I was like, that's who he is. But I was like, on IMDb, like,
Yeah.
who's the girl? Who is it? And yeah, like you just, and I think thinking about how our human design charts are generated, we were actually both talking about the software we use before
Yeah.
we came on here for you guys to go and get your human design chart. I mean, I don't know when that came. Like, how quickly did that come about? And people actually could just log on and get their human design chart? Or was it like in the old days? I mean, I don't know the history of how astrology charts or human design charts were actually created, but I'm guessing initially when human design was first found, like how did you make a human design chart and when did that software become into the
Yeah.
mainstream that people could just type it in and they just get it and there's reports generated and it's just, I mean, I do think some of that has to help with the how many people now know about it, that the software side of it.
Yeah, like you say, it improves like systems technology that improves the distribution of information, doesn't it? Because I think traditionally astrology charts, like you'd give your birth data, you might have to wait a couple of weeks for it to come back because they're sort of sat there with their like tools and they're drawing it all out by hand.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. So that, I mean, so now, like anything, what if we go back to what we were originally talking about, is it used for good or bad or whatever? Once this information is more widespread as a percentage of people with access to it,
Mm,
you've got more people with access to it. So the percentage of people thinking, oh, this is really helpful information. I can use this to drive my marketing and I can do this. Whereas, if you only had a select few people who was really super interested in astrology,
mm,
you probably had less of that because your pool of people go willing to go to the effort and the
yeah.
of doing it, they were genuinely interested in it. Whereas now it's like anything. Once it becomes so widespread and everyone has access to it, you've got the general gist of, okay, the majority of people are using it in a nice way. But then again, you could argue that the ease at which you can technically learn human design now without any supervision, without any it can also be what leads to bad readings.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah, no, absolutely. Because we were just again having a chat, just because we know human design and we understand it and we've done the training and we've like I think both of us have trained with Karen Curry Parker plus various other different people. Um, just because we know it and understand it doesn't mean that we don't also consume what other people put out. And we were saying, so I've looked at something recently that somebody put out because I think it's interesting to get different perspectives. Like, because people interpret things again, going back to that, when we look at things through a different lens, we might interpret things slightly differently. And I quite like, so whilst I read other people's charts and I give my interpretations, I don't very often look at my own. So I quite like reading about my own chart from somebody else's perspective. And we talk quite a lot between each other about our own charts and our own experiences. And, we give each other different kind of nudges and insights and things like that. And I think it's not a fixed thing. It was never meant to put you into a box. I know both of us very much believe that. And I think that is when, you hear about some bad readings where people say, oh no, I can't do that, because, or they start believing that they can't do something because, oh, I'm a projector, I have to sort of wait to be invited. It's like, okay, that's not kind of, that's like a very literal interpretation. That's not actually, like, in real life, how that is supposed to work. um like manigens, just because you're a manigen doesn't mean that you can't stick to anything, and you're doing multiple different things. Like, your proof in the pudding, like, you do have consistency, you can stick to things, you can follow things through, but you can also multitask, right?
Yeah, it's a nuance in how the information is landed. I mean, I didn't actually train with Karen Curry Parker, but I suppose I self-trained with her. I read her books and her courses and her, but I didn't do the actual certification. So technically, I do not have a certification in human design. I have been through, I personally wanted to get my perspective from as many different people as possible.
Mm.
And I've like completely geeked out on every course, everything. Um, and I think I didn't even know there was a certification. I think when I first started learning, I didn't come across that. But I think it's like, the general thing in the coaching industry, it's like anything. Even if you have a certification, it doesn't necessarily mean that that person is delivering the information in a responsible way. It is
Yeah,
still down thing. And also, whoever you work with on anything, they're going to have their own filter over it, aren't they?
yeah.
So my life experiences, my experience with human design, that's going to filter how I present the information. And as much as I love human design, I do appreciate how it can be a little bit dangerous.
Mm,
If you have a little bit of information
yeah.
and you get yourself stuck in it. Um, and I do, I actually really like, you said about people sort of putting their own spin on it a little bit. I do like it because the way human design works, especially with the gates, is there's like one word to describe it. There's a lot of pressure on one
Mm,
word
yeah.
to describe something. And so, again, depending on how you are looking, I always like to look at what's the essence of something, what is the
Mm,
whole meaning of something, and do all these different descriptions that people have chosen to change the language slightly. Are they still all telling the same story? As long as they're not contradicting each other and we're literally changing it, but
yeah.
has the interpretation of the word helped someone in a particular situation or circumstance for it to resonate? So, like you said, I do think because obviously I find like one of these episodes we had was about the three because I asked you about the three
Yeah.
because I don't have a three. So I can only read and learn the three. I don't have experience of a three. I have experience of the two, four.
Yeah.
And so again, that's partly why I wanted to maybe sample as many different people as possible. And I think also sometimes the language changes a little bit because the person who is that profile or has that center or has that gate, they then start to express their experience of it,
Mm-hmm.
which adds to the pool as long as I mean, there's one website which I can't remember what it is, but it is a complete guide to the whole of human design. And then there's one piece. Most of it's right, but then there's one piece where I think it's like clearly they didn't quite understand it. I don't know if it's about the digestions or about, and I'm just like, that is wrong. Like, that
Yeah.
is wrong. But everything else on there is right. So if you are just a person who's just starting your journey and you're going to go along and read that one description, you'd think that was correct. So that was another reason why I wanted to read over and over again and really try and get the whole, what is the essence of this saying? not just the word.
Yeah. And I think that's really valuable because, and I know both of us have got this and we've read his books, Richard Rudd, that changed some of my interpretations of some of the gates when I was reading through the Gene Keys. I mean, it's a massive, massive tome of a book and it's quite overwhelming. But again, like in my learning, because I'm a line 3, I learned through experience. So I started by focusing on the gates that I have,
Mm.
um, understanding and interpreting what he'd written and whether I resonated with it. And there were some bits that I did find quite triggering, not going to lie. I think it's the gate 10. And I've had to read that and I still have to keep going back to read that because one of the, I think it's gate 10, it's the love of the self because it's in your self center. And it's all about embodiment, like loving the essence of who you are, right? But we can overdo that. And there's a fine line between loving yourself and like really obsessing over yourself in like a more narcissistic, psychopathic kind of way. And I genuinely, when I first read that, I was like, oh God, do people think I'm like this? So I've had to kind of read it, assimilate it, understand how it fits in with other parts of my chart and what. So it doesn't mean, I mean, I've got a friend, I've got a friend who I talk to on a regular basis, like, mate, am I a narcissist? And she's like, the very fact that you're questioning that means you're not. Don't worry. I was like, okay, that's interesting.
I have gate 10 in my Mercury, so it filters my communication.
Mm-hmm.
And again, because obviously the success codex, if you've seen that symbol, is like a interpretation of the gene keys, human design through the lens of the planets. And again, like you said, it's like reading it, it says here authentic, inauthentic. And I do sometimes feel like, and when you read the description, it talks about like trying too hard,
Yeah.
essentially. Like, and I'm not, and I'm maybe I am quite visual. So, and I mean, that came in really handy when I was doing the wedding cakes and the things. Like, I needed my pictures and I needed the image of the ideal wedding. So, any pictures I took had to fit this narrative of the branding and the weddings and stuff. But I take quite a lot of pictures and I share my life quite a lot online. And in my home in general, I am a little bit visually OCD. Like everything has to look a certain way, or I get agitated because it doesn't look right. So if you come into my home, it does generally look quite put together because if it's not, I get agitated. But even so, when I'm like taking the pictures to share on Facebook and I am changing it and moving it and I'm sort of making the coffee table look nice and stuff, I have this whole narrative in my head. Am I becoming self-obsessed here? Am I becoming like, am I trying too hard? Is this authentic? Or is
Yeah.
this slipping into the inauthentic because I'm
Mm.
becoming like obsessed? And I do have that like constant narrative in my head. And I'm like, no, but I just think I should move the dirty tea towel out the back. It's
Yeah.
like, where is the line between that? So yeah, it's a tricky gate to manage.
It
Yeah.
is. I think especially with the advent of all these like AI imagery and things like that. I remember I showed up to a networking event. It must be about maybe about 18 months ago. And when you have an online business, you talk to people online all the time. Don't Where I live, I don't see that many people in person. And I went to this networking event and sort of said, oh, hi, I'm, Sarah. And they were like, oh my God, you're exactly the same as I've seen you online. Like you even sound the same. I'm like, okay, that's good. Why? And in my head, I was genuinely like, why would I be anyone else? Like that did not compute that I would not be anything other than. But then they sort of shared that they've met other people that who had their images like doctored and um things, like there was a particular online version like image, and then when they met them in person they were really dismissive, not very present, like it was a completely different, their experience of that person was totally different to the person online. So for me that was like a massive compliment. They were like, oh no, you're just exactly how I imagined you to be. And so that was a massive, like, big tick for me. It's like, oh, that's good, I am
I've
being
done
authentic.
gate 10 correct.
Yeah.
Sick.
You.
Yeah, I mean, I think it helped me with Gate 10. The website, I wasn't there anymore, and one of the first resources that I found to look up the gates was it was called the 64 Doors.
Oh yes, I know which one you mean. Yeah, is it not there
And
anymore?
well, no, they've redone it. It was closed. I'm just Googling it now. They were redoing all the gates. So when you go, it says it's locked. So yeah, like gate 9 was where I started because that's my son. It says access coming soon, and all those descriptions have gone, so you can't get at any of them. Um,
Oh,
so I don't know what they're doing with the website. They're redoing it, whatever. But the description that it used to have there of gate 10 and the archetype that it had, was the natural.
yeah.
That was the archetype it gave to gate 10. Um, and so
Oh, I do have it.
have what?
I've got access to that website and that archetype.
Oh, I'll have to have a look at that afterwards. Mine's locked and it says access coming soon.
Oh,
Um, I Yeah, so when I started looking at it was very much describing almost like what you just said, that natural. It's just you are naturally who you are.
yeah.
And that's the energy of that, and it's not going to change whether you're online or whatever. I do feel I'm pretty similar to that. The only thing that I think people may or I have to manage is actually then my 2-4 profile because
Yeah.
that can be two very different people.
Mm,
Because if I am in the right environment and I have the right energy and everything is right, then you're going to get the line 4, which is what most people see on these videos or when
yeah.
I'm on calls and I'm very bubbly and I'm all chatty and I'm super friendly and I'm all lovely. But when that energy is gone and my energy is depleted and I'm in the 2 energy, I can become very quiet. I don't put myself forward. I do retreat. And so I will just be sitting there not saying anything and then people are like, oh, is she okay? Does she not like me? Or does she? And so that 2 energy, if the person I'm interacting with has any kind of insecurities or
Yeah.
their own things, they're going to interpret my silence as I don't want to talk to them.
Mm,
And so again, that's why I kind of love human design because I went on a retreat a couple of years ago. And I actually did, as part of the retreat, I did a presentation on human design on the first day. And so we went through everything. And I obviously told them the story about my 2-4 profile and the push-pull of the people, the no people, whatever. And then there was all different spots around the house. And one day I was just sitting there in the corner, like just having a minute to myself, and someone walked past. And they just went, is your line too having a bit of a time out? I was like, yes. But because everyone had the language and the
yeah.
narrative and like they then didn't think I was ignoring them. I didn't want to talk to them. I was just recharging my energy. So then when we went back into the next activity, that thing, I can turn up as the happy Katie everyone knows. But I do the slump in energy that is gone. It's done. I've finished now. It's real. And yeah, so when people meet me, there is a possibility, even though I am always myself, it still can look like two different people.
Yeah. But yeah, that's really interesting. And I think that goes back to, it's an understanding, isn't it? It's an acceptance. I think the acceptance has to start with yourself, with recognizing you, like the essence of you, and because I think it's very easy to kind of take on other people's ideas or concepts, or like we do it at school, don't we? We're like, oh, that person's really popular, we'll try and, I don't know, not copy but
Mm.
like emulate style or things like that. And I think it takes quite a lot to sort of stand on your own, like in your own self. And I do think some of that acceptance comes with age. I think the 47-year-old me is definitely a lot more self-confident, not self-conscious, but more consciously aware of who I am compared to the 17-year-old version of me.
So your gate 10, do you have an undefined G center?
No, I have a defined G center.
Right, so we both have a defined G center. Because I was going to say, as a child, part of my, I didn't have the best experience at school. Um, I didn't really fit in,
Yeah,
etc.
me
But
too.
I do feel like now looking back, it's trying to discern the difference between what, again, what these language and what these words actually mean. I wouldn't say I was confident, but I did have a very fixed, sure sense of self. So
Yes,
I would not do anything I did not want to do.
yeah,
So if I didn't want to get in the shopping trolley and go down the hill, if I didn't want to sit in the park drinking cider, if I didn't want to wear XYZ, if I didn't want to do whatever, I was incredibly stubborn and had a fixed sense of my own values and self and who I am. And that then caused me to not fit in, which
yeah.
I
So I
think
had,
then caused a lack of confidence.
yeah, no, exactly that. So I had a very similar experience to you. I didn't really have like a group, a very defined specific group of friends. One of the things that I really struggled with in particular was the sort of big girl groups, because of the inauthenticity of those, which I didn't have the language for at the time, but I would call it out all the time, like, why are you being nice to my face, or why are you being nice to her face, when literally 10 minutes ago before they walked into the room you were slagging them off? Like, that's not cool to me, and I don't want to be part of that group. And I think in some ways, so I've got a couple of friends that I'm still friends with from school, um, and they always said, oh God, you were so self-assured and so confident and so like steady, like you carried confidence, but it's not like an outwardly brash confidence. It's more of a like a quiet, I describe it as like a quiet certainty. Like you say, I was internally, I knew who I was, and I didn't like some of the behavior that I saw, and chose not to engage with that. But like you say, that almost puts you as a bit of an outcast
It put me as
in
an
that environment.
outsider, which then meant I had no confidence. So it's like
Yeah,
my confidence of I'm not getting involved in that. I'm not
yeah,
going to bully them. I'm not going to steal their shoes and hide them. I'm not
yeah,
playing that game.
no,
And so I didn't, I don't know if this is the right language, but like the herd mentality, the group, I just want to join in so I'm accepted.
yeah, I never did that.
I wouldn't do that.
No,
So therefore I was not accepted. So therefore I had no confidence. So it's like this loop of like, yeah, I'm an outsider. But
but it's funny because my eldest son has a defined G center, and he's had exactly the same experience in school. Secondary school was a nightmare for him. He's coming to the end of year 11 now, but we moved. So I think the difference being is using the language, because when he was coming up against friendship issues or certain things or certain behaviors, I used the language I used to him was like, trust yourself. What feels good to you? Is this okay to you? It's like, no, well, fine, opt out then. Opt out of that WhatsApp group. You don't have to be there. You can choose to be out of it. And it's trying to give him confidence. And then we ended up moving his secondary school. Um, the option came up, we went to have a look, and I was like, okay, how does this feel to you? And he's like, I am here. I want to be here. And that just, he's now leaving secondary school with his confidence up here compared to where I was when it was like down here, because he trusted himself. Didn't mean it wasn't scary as a parent, because you're like, oh my God, we're moving him in year 10. This is like GCSE year. This could go very wrong. Have we just screwed things up for him? But so as a parent, it's really hard. I'm trying to encourage him, to empower him to trust in his compass, in his sense of self, in his sense of direction. And, you know, I think it's paying off. I believe it's paying off. I mean, like I said, he's a wonderful kid. I don't know. Yeah, he's 15. He'll be 16 this year. And he's confident. He's passionate about his thoughts and beliefs. They don't always fit in with other people, and other people find him a bit much. But, you know, somebody said to me, and I really value this person. So he did work experience with them last year as a favor to me. And he was sharing his opinions, and I caught myself doing it. So he has an undefined throat center, so has a tendency to kind of fill the spaces like me. And I said to him, just remember you've got to listen as well. Like, don't talk over other people, because he's neurodivergent and doesn't always notice the visual cues, to like when people are switched off or bored. Anyway, my friend and colleague came and gave me a debrief and said, how's he getting on? She was like, he's very passionate when he's talking. I was like, oh my God, I'm so sorry. Is he kind of too vocal? She was like, you don't need to apologize. It's so good to see somebody so young with such well thought out and well formed opinions. And he's passionate about what he's talking about. Like, that's okay. And I was like, oh yeah, you know, you have to check yourself. And he is passionate about what he's talking about. And I have to be aware. And goes back to that understanding and awareness. Like, it's okay for him to be very opinionated when it's triggering me, or when it's making me feel uncomfortable. It's not necessarily him, it's about where I'm at with my energy.
Yeah,
What
it's
is
the
it?
combination, isn't it? And I think,
Yeah.
I mean, I was on a different call with some other people. We were talking about corporate settings. And, how can we use human design in corporate? And we were talking about the different approaches of the lines. And, if you've got someone who has a dominant line one and doesn't really have any three energy, and you've got someone who's a line three and you're colleagues and you're working on the same project, so they're get really annoyed with each other. Like one's like going deep down, learning all the facts, and the three is just like, can we just let's
Just
just
move
try
on. Let's
it.
get
Let's
on
just
with
do
it.
it
Let's
to
test
do
it.
it.
Yeah, yeah.
And it's like that understanding of every single person's individual approach is correct for them in the context. And the problem that we have is that we especially with school systems is like a false no choice system.
Mm,
You put in a class with, I don't know how many people these days, I don't have children, but let's say 30 kids in a class, and you're all there, and you look at, if you were to map out their human design, are they all actually good matches? Probably not,
no.
but you don't have any choice, and you're in that system, and so actually school could be an incredible learning ground of tolerance and difference and understanding. So, but does it really work like that? Or do people just get bullied and hate school? How does it work? And then as you grow older, you have a job. Some people do. They go and work in a corporate setting or a workplace, and you have slightly more choice because you chose that job. But depending on your outlook or how you've been brought up or your conditioning, you might just think, well, I've got a job. I should be grateful for my job. I'm not going to complain. I can't lose my job.
Yeah.
and again end up in a situation where, again, technically it's not all gelling together perfectly. And then you find a lot of us have gone, stuff this, I'm going self-employed. Then I can choose where all the connections are and I've got full autonomy over it. And so I think, it's a very, if we were all following our human design and we all knew about everybody else's human design and we all put ourselves in the right places, it would all be perfect. The world would be perfect.
Would it though? Would it? I don't know. Is that even? I don't
Well,
think it would be perfect.
it wouldn't be perfect, but it might be better.
I think we'd have less conflict.
We'd
I
have
think,
less conflict. We'd
yeah.
have more understanding, more tolerance, more conflict to an extent. You'd still have different things because it would be if everyone kind of, was completely self-aware, no shadows, no conditioning. No, I mean, is that likely? But maybe that's a good place to end today's chat. Let's just get everybody following their human design. We'd have less conflict in the world. What do we think?
I'd quite happily live in a world like that.
Well, thank you for joining us on it really was unscripted today. Not quite sure how I'm going to unpack all of that into the description of the episode. But thank you for listening, and we will be back soon for some more unscripted human design chat.